I wanted to make a video on this because I thought it'd be an interesting discussion to have. We've been covering the hot fixes and changes to Mythic Plus, and honestly, they've been surprising to me. I'm not really sure. It's not the approach I would expect Blizzard to have taken thus far. Now, maybe I've been around for too many seasons and I expect too many things from them, but I would like to hear your guys' thoughts on this because um, my let's just read what we have here and then we'll talk about why this is happening. So there's some changes. So, we saw changes to dungeons, and I immediately think, okay, here's something that we want to talk about, right? So Granith, this is the dragon boss, fixed an issue where multiple players could interact with the ballista at the same time and each fire an arrow. Okay. Tira and Maruk fixed an issue where blessing of protection could allow players to be immune to the effects of Tira's gale arrows. So this is not something I knew about, but I imagine that it was very powerful if people were doing this intentionally. This I did know a lot about. I've seen a lot of people talk about this. And this is now one of many new tips and tricks kind of thing that, a lot of people probably make videos on and get a lot of attention on because Mythic Plus is uniquely difficult in the way that it's always difficult. There's always some difficulty. And, a lot of people turn to strategies to try to circumvent that in different ways. So in the past, the way I've seen Blizzard handle it is if it's like really, really, really aggressive, then they will do something to change it. But I've been embroiled in this conversation quite a few times over the years. And the one that is most famous to me was from Tarvold. If you guys watched back in the beginning of Shadowlands, I made a video on snapping Tarvold. This is the second boss in Sanguine Depths. It's basically extremely similar to the third boss in Azure Vault. But anyway, and that's ironic for a different reason. But yes, so you can actually snap him down a level. Now there's a lot to talk about here. I don't want to get into all this, but regardless, the reason I'm bringing it up is because a lot of people told me that that's like not only a bug and that it should be fixed, but that's cheating, right? And in Mythic Plus, it doesn't seem to work that way. I'm not really sure why, to be honest. But it does seem like Blizzard has a bit of a track record of just saying if you are able to do it inside the confines of the timer and it is not completely trivializing the content that is there, then you're usually fine with it. So a lot of these things just seem like that's just the landscape. And I have to say, I quite think that is a fun part of the landscape because it's very different from a raiding situation. If you did the same thing here where the raid has a ballista that you have to shoot at the boss, and if you do it with two people, you're going to get banned for that. That's going to get fixed the second it's discovered. It's not even going to, it's a completely different conversation. So I don't know fully what would be the reasoning for that and why it seemed like for years this wasn't true. And I wanted to make one more point on the Tarvold thing because when this conversation occurred, I actually showed footage from the BlizzCon or whatever. I don't remember if it was a BlizzCon, but there was like an MDI at the end of Battle for Azeroth. Okay, so we're talking about me in Shadowlands talking about Battle for Azeroth in case you're lost here. And the top team, the winning team, snapping. It was actually like a reverse snap. They would. I can't even describe it to be honest. It's that ridiculous. But basically, the entire upper floor of a Taldazar would get snapped down to the boss. The tank would have all that stuff, and then he would get snapped to the boss because the boss couldn't physically leave the arena. This is the most absurd thing I've ever seen, and the team who did it won money directly from Blizzard as a part of a prize. So, to me, that says everything you need to know about it. Flash forward to today, and now we're seeing hotfix after hotfix adjusting the actual things that look like that. To me, is this that big of a deal? No, it's certainly not. And, I didn't even see it done once. You can barely get people to click it at all in Pugs, let alone two people. But it's kind of like, it's made me really think about it. So I'd like to hear your thoughts. Do you guys think that these fun little tips and tricks are, kind of a part of the identity of Mythic Plus? Are you lamenting the fact that they're being changed? Do you think they're cheating? Do you think you should be like actioned if you do these things? Like, where is that line drawn for you? I'd love to hear some of the comments on that. And I would also love to hear what you guys think about the way the dungeons are balanced right now, because there's a little bit more, so we'll read this too. Reduce the party, or reduce the damage of targeting, triggering a hail bomb by 40%, and reduce party-wide AoE damage of the initial cast of hail bombs by 66%. The initial on-cast hit from hail bombs was never intended to be a large source of damage, and when scaled up on Mythic Plus, it is contributing more damage to the fight than we'd like. So we're reining it in to give healers more breathing room. I actually really respect that decision. Again, this is not the approach I would take to solve some of these problems, but it is a respectable position to be taking, and that dungeon is needing it because the punishment that you're getting from having any mechanical failure on all three of those bosses is absurd. And you saw that if you watched the video I published last week about the people who were struggling to get past the second boss. So, and then on top of that, Kokia Blazehoof has also been changed in a very similar way to what we just described. Severely less punishing now for the tank now, which is strange to me because this boss is actually not that hard to tank. The problem with it is it literally can auto attack you from anywhere. And well, maybe not anywhere, but its magic or its main tank breaker is actually, it seems to have like an infinite range, and that's not good in a fight where you're supposed to move. So I don't really like that. But I guess that probably is like a coding change. This is just a numbers change. So instead of doing that, they're just going to make the mechanic way less dangerous, I guess. And we'll see how that plays out. But I mean, it's still, that's not really going to change anything about why that mechanic and that fight in general are bad. So there's also some other changes here. Fixed an issue where some enemies near Veximus did not provide enemy forces credit, which is very strange. And then they know this will make enemies in the dungeon appear to grant slightly less enemy forces, but defeating the enemies affected by this change was required to engage Veximus. And I think because it was actually when I made the route video, there was actually some peculiarity about the route, and it doesn't match up with the reality. And so I think that's probably the actual issue here. So we'll see what I haven't played in a few days now, so we'll see what this looks like afterwards when we get back into Algathar. But I don't know. I just really wanted to make a conversation happen about this. I'm very conflicted on it, honestly, and I don't really care one way or the other. Like, I'm not going to stop playing the game because of it. But to me, it does feel like a lot of these tips and tricks are they're part of the identity of Mythic Plus. Now, they could go in the wrong direction, like the whole snapping Tarvold thing. And if you ever watch, I always talk about this, if you ever watch the Shadow Moon Barrier Grounds, like world first runs in WoD, you should do that. If you haven't done that, you should really do that. It is absolutely absurd. And it will really give you, it'll give you a good perspective on what the game looks like now compared to back then. So yeah, let me know what you guys think about this. I'm still disappointed with some of the changes as well, like on top of the philosophy behind them. I think they're coming very slowly. I don't really like when there's like a super out of whack key, and that was in Season 4, that was Karazhan to me, even though maybe the stats wouldn't necessarily recommend that as being true. But this dungeon, it does seem like Ruby Life Pools is that dungeon now, and I'm glad that they are making some changes, but I just don't think these are the solutions. And on top of that, it's not, there's other dungeons out there with other problems that aren't being touched. There's yet to be a single change to the timer of any dungeon. And the reason I wanted to make this video is because we are now 5 weeks into a season that presumably is going to be relatively short. Like, they seem to really have their act together, as it were. And so I don't think we're going to see an 8th month season. So they're changing these dungeons. We're now 5 weeks into, I mean, maybe 20 weeks. Like, I don't, who knows? Who knows what the season's going to look like? But we are relatively underway here, and it seems like they're only willing to make big changes on the resets. So that means we now have another full week before anything comes. So I don't know. Just wanted to get all that out there. Let me know what you guys think. I'd love to have a conversation about this. So thank you for watching. We'll see you guys in the next one.